a 4 megabyte block was published on Bitcoin. It's the largest Bitcoin block ever. Why does that matter? Well, a lot of people think that Bitcoin blocks should be small in order to increase decentralization of the network. But what we have here is someone printing a JPEG onto the network that was 4 megabytes in size. As you can see there, it's a pretty fun little wizard harkening back to the Bitcoin Talk Forum days. Adam, I want to get your take on this story. I absolutely loved seeing this happen, but it's causing a lot of infighting within the Bitcoin community.
Yeah, the topic of what is Bitcoin for has been one of the biggest arguments going back to the very, very beginning. If you ask some people, they'll tell you it's a neutral layer that is intended for anything that you can, complying with the Bitcoin rules and paying the price of putting it into the blockchain, can put it into the blockchain. And then you'll talk to other people, sometimes who have actually done exactly that, who have put stuff into the blockchain that's not transactions, and who then argue that anybody else who has a use that they disagree with shouldn't be allowed to do that. And so this really does wind up coming down to power, again, as always. Who has it? Who gets to decide these things? And who has to listen to those? What are the rules of this kind of situation? So to me, this is much ado about nothing. The reality of it is that for more than 10 years now, people have been putting non-currency, non-transactional data into the Bitcoin blockchain. Whether you're talking about Luke Dash Jr. putting passages from the Bible in, back in 2011, 2012, even though he's now and has always been actually one of the harshest critics, or you're talking about the phenomenon of rare Pepes, which every single day you'll see thousands of transactions going on the Bitcoin blockchain, and as they have over the course of the last, I think, 9 or 8 years at this point. So to me, this is kind of much ado about nothing. And the whole story was a little weird because kind of it seems like people are like, oh, this is the first time that somebody's ever done this. And that's just so not true. It's just kind of, it defies belief, at least for me as someone who's been sitting here watching this thing for a whole 10 years now. But yeah, so not surprised, not impressed, not really concerned. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the latest fault line in maybe like the re-envisioning of what sort of the Bitcoin philosophy can or should be, right? I think there's been a lot of sort of loud, maybe former Bitcoin maximalists who are saying that Bitcoin maximalism is sort of a bankrupt moral compass by which the Bitcoin community should judge itself. And I think this sort of move by Udi and others is to advance what a Bitcoin philosophy could be that isn't stringent maximalism that we've seen potentially alienate a lot of people from the Bitcoin space. That's what Udi and others would argue. Say, hey, like Bitcoin maximalism, this this purity, isn't resonating with people, right? You have all these people coming into the broader crypto economy by way of NFTs. Maybe there's a way to advance this conversation in an orderly fashion within the Bitcoin community. This seems to be sort of ramping up the troll level to advance the conversation or accelerate that conversation at least, right? But it's gonna be really curious to see what the outcome of this conversation is. What does the next Bitcoin philosophy look like? What does something like maximalism light ultimately look like? Can it be encompassing of these protocols that do other things relative to what Bitcoin had done previously? So that I think is sort of the bigger subtext that we're seeing here is sort of Bitcoin maximalism as a worldview faltering, other people who had believed that previously recognizing it as a little bit broken and figuring out how to advance it to some other state. I guess that would be the charitable read, but I think it is really interesting to see these kind of cultural fissures emerge and sort of morph into these various odd things, of which now this wizard meme is one of them. Adam, I think I saw your hand. I'll toss it right back to you.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of tagging onto that point, all of these maximalism sort of traits wind up looking pretty indistinguishable from a religion after a relatively short period of time. And what you find in religions is that once they hit certain amounts of controversy, once they hit certain amounts of just, again, doctrinal differences in terms of the interpretation, especially in areas like this where there really is no canonical interpretation, there's only a really, really vibrant fight for who gets to decide this stuff. Again, you see splintering, you see, factions, you see forks. That's really what we're talking about. If you look at the history of religion, it's a history of forking protocols. And that's sort of what you see here in terms of the ideology. So I think even talking about the idea of Bitcoin maximalism as something that's unified speaks to this orthodoxy. And I think that that's what we then see is people who subscribe to that particular set of beliefs, then, saying others believe the wrong thing because they are divergent from that orthodoxy. It is, in fact, a form of fundamentalism, it seems to me. So it's a fascinating thing we've seen develop. Again, kind of the reinvention of religion at the technological stage. But I continue to watch it in a bit of disbelief even all these years later. Will, down to you.
Aren't we having fun though? And that's what this is all about, right? Like, I want to see Jen's opinion on this because this is NFTs on Bitcoin, the original chain. This is what it's supposed to be about. Jen, like, why aren't you throwing a party over there? Like, I want to see some confetti.
I am throwing a party, and I wish that the control room would give me confetti to just celebrate every NFT story. And Will, any NFT story that gets you excited, I am on board with. I know, when you look at Bitcoin, you compare it to Ethereum. We've talked about this before. Like in the mainstream, Bitcoin is seen as just this one-trick pony. It can do one thing. It was created for peer-to-peer transactions, and it has this like crazy religious army behind it who doesn't want to see anything else happen. I think that this is a really cool, pivotal moment, and if we can see NFTs help change that narrative for Bitcoin, I think it's cool. But I do agree with you, Zach, that we are at this like weird. I guess we're at this weird point where we're going to have to define the next philosophy of Bitcoin. And I wonder what's going to happen and how the mentality of the people who we call Bitcoin maximalists will change, or if it will stay the same and they will continue in their own little cult-like group and attach themselves to some kind of fork, or there will be a fork for the other people. So I wonder what will happen from here. I think it's a cool story, and that is my take on it.